like that. So, yeah, it was in the $2 million range statewide.
Yeah, we had a new motion to raise our endowment fee, and some of the brothers were not so excited about that.
Yeah,
Well, it was tabled for another month, so we'll see what happens.
yeah. That's in. I think that's in your bylaws, or I think it's in our bylaws. So anytime we want to talk about it, it's always got to be tabled for a month.
Yeah, ours is in our bylaws as well, so
Yeah.
it'll be at least a month before it gets taken up again. But we'll see what happens.
Hmm. What's up, guys?
Good evening.
What's happening? I need to get my headphones. Just a second. I was charging them.
Daniel, were you talking about endowments just now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You trying to get me fired up?
Oh, it was a fired up meeting on Thursday night at our stated meeting for just even the motion to have it happen.
You're being elitist, and what about those fixed income brothers? You're being terrible.
Well, see, I really stirred the pot because we have a breakfast on Saturday mornings afterwards, and I was talking with another brother, and I was like, look, endowments is only one part of the problem. You have to do with dues. You have to do, what's the value proposition?
Mhm.
And I was just kind of like, look, we need to raise prices across the board. He's like, and that was exactly what he said. What about those fixed income brothers? What about this? What about that? I'm
Oh,
like,
it's the
look,
same. It's the same argument. It's always. I mean, it's the go-to.
yeah. I
you,
said,
Did you explain the
is
math?
masonry worth it to you or not? Like, that's the question.
Did you explain the math behind the endowments?
We looked at the math behind it, and we talked about it a little bit, and
Okay.
I just, yeah, I'm along the Masonic improvement school of thought.
Mhm.
It's
When-
just trying to get other people.
Show them the video. Make them watch the video. You know what? When Dennis comes back, we'll talk about endowments real quick, and then you can say, "Watch the first 5 minutes of this video."
All right, sounds like a plan.
I mean, it's what this whole channel exists for, is for education, right? It's made to be shared, things like that. What's up, Penguin? Pinguino? How you doing,
Yeah,
Brad?
my MWSA, we met last weekend, and we had Brother Zachary Haston out
Mm.
and gave us a rundown of
Very
how
nice.
our membership's doing.
Oh, cool.
I like
Yeah.
Zach a lot.
Are you back, Dennis?
I am.
All right, I'm gonna click a whole bunch of buttons, and then we'll be good to go. I'm just clicking away over here. They'll do something eventually. There we go. I think we're live. I think we're all set. How is everybody?
Peachy.
Peachy? That's good. Good. Dennis,
Yeah.
there was a brother was talking about endowments. It was, I won't name names, I guess. But it was a brother talking about endowments before we came live. Having some resistance. I like to just take 5 minutes and just give my endowment rant. That way he can say, go back to the guys at Lodge and say, watch the first 5 minutes of this video. Because endowments have changed kind of since we talked about it last, I think, with some of the updates.
Well, the endowments haven't changed. Some perspective has changed, but I'll let you go ahead and give your perspective, and then I'll throw mine in too, and then we can let our inner circle join in as well if they'd like to.
Okay.
It's always a good conversation.
I think the last time that we really did a video on endowments, the guaranteed return was between 3 and 5%. And that's really what I'm talking about, what has probably changed. And it was the year before last, it fixed at 5%. So you're
Well, it. Can I help you?
please.
I'm sorry.
By all means.
It's actually an average of the past 3 years. Every year is the average of the past 3 years. It's not just fixed at any particular number, but it will fluctuate less because it's an average of the 3 years. That way, if you have a dip for 1 year or even 2 years, you may have that strong recovery that's going to help it for our actual purposes.
Yeah.
Just for everyone to know, that's how the endowments actually.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
Go ahead.
fine. No, it's still when you say the average. I mean, it's not.
But it still averages
Yeah, and
5%. That's the goal.
It's not changing a whole lot anyway. So yeah, it's the
Yeah.
average, but it's still pretty consistent. So you could say 5%, and it's gonna. I think it was like a 20-cent difference last year or something like that. It's not a huge difference, but there's a small amount of fluctuation. But we'll just keep it at 5% for the sake of this. So that means for every
Well, we should, because that is, why they did it was to keep it at about
yeah.
that that price point, and not so it won't fluctuate so much like it has in the past.
So for every $100 in the that is in the endowment, you're getting $5 back. And if you're at the minimum endowment of $500, you're getting $25 back. And the per capita is $27.50 right now. And it could be argued the per capita needs to go up. So you're losing $2.50 right there off the bat for every endowed member, right off the bat. And if they're like 60, 75, that's not a huge problem because then you could argue, well, it's going to keep paying it into when they pass on. That's fair. But if the guy's 20 years old, you're losing $2.50. You could also argue we're also losing whatever you would have gotten in dues for the rest of this guy's life. So there's kind of like Dennis said, there's some nuances to it, but that's the basics. And really, your endowment should be set high enough that you're keeping into account that 5%. So if your dues are $100 and you want to be sure that you're getting $100 in the foreseeable future from this guy, then the multiplier is 20 times your dues. So if your dues are $100, then your endowment really needs to be $2,000 to be sure that you're getting. And really, what that is basically it's saying it's locking in the returns for this guy for the foreseeable future. He can always contribute more to his endowment down the road if he wants to. But you're saying right now, as it is, with the members we have, we need $100 per member. And so if we set our endowments at this, even if you do endow, at least we're still getting $100 from you for the foreseeable future. Do you have anything to add to that, Dennis?
Yes, I do. I agree 100%, and I think that a lot of times what some lodges do, and which is the worst practice ever, is they look at where their checking account is, and they decide on if they're okay with endowments. Or like one of my lodges, we make a considerable dividend every year for paid out monthly, that we don't have to even charge dues. But that's not coming from any of the current brothers. So what are they invested in? Mm-hmm. So what are they really invested in? And it also goes along with something I wanted to talk about a little bit later. So which is value proposition. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of lodges that keep these dues artificially low, and then because they have a decent banking account that some other guys left for them, and then they just propose that everyone sell endowments every month. That somebody stands up and says, "Hey guys, buy endowments. They're only the Grand Lodge minimum," which I'm not a fan of either. But I'm gonna say I do have them. Mm-hmm. And I purchased them before I really started doing the math. And now I'm doing the math, and now I'm wanting to get on the audit committee for every one of the lodges I belong to, because it's time for us to take a good, hard, close look at where we are financially. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much for what we have invested, but what our current brothers are investing. Because if they're not investing, they're not going to feel any strong pull to keep them there if somebody says one thing wrong. It's like, oh, well, I've had it with this, I'll just move on. There's not enough here to So there's no real value proposition there, and they haven't really put any skin in the game,
I like
right?
that. Yeah.
So that's my big concern with endowments. I love the idea of endowments, but when they were proposed at 15 times the annual dues, and the annual dues were not artificially low because of poor management. We didn't really start, they were low.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. In the
Well, it was
80s,
also the 80s, so it
right,
seems low
so
to
the
us
80s,
now.
right. So the 80s were low. Don't get me wrong. And they were still low for that time, but they weren't artificial. We still have a lot of lodges that are still at those 80s levels dues, because they feel like if they increase, they're not going to get the Masons that they want, or they're not going to get Masons. But we've seen it time and time and again, lodge after lodge complain because the Masons that they're getting are not what they really wanted.
Yeah.
So how do you fix that? You increase your value, you increase your expectations, you increase your dues, you increase your endowments, you increase everything that has to do with the lodge, and whoever sticks is going to be the cream of the crop because they expect the cream of the crop. And so that small percentage, which is still all you get in a lodge right now, is a small percentage. I would rather have 10 hard-ass working Masons in my lodge than 100 that don't do anything, and then 10 mediocre Masons that come in just because they feel obligated to do so.
Yeah. I think it's
So
also
that's the real question we have to be looking at is, where is the heart of the Mason? And that's what we should be focusing on. Because if we're not right here, we're not going to be right anywhere else around us. So that's the heart of the matter to me. And I think that even though I didn't talk numbers specifically, which I could if you want me to, we don't need to, because the problem is the heart of the Mason.
Yeah, and to that point, and I brought this up before, you've heard probably horror stories of people that have won the lottery, for example, and they think they have a couple of million, so they just blow it in less than a year. They're in more debt than they were before they won the lottery. It's the same mentality that you have when you say, hey, our lodge has a $500,000 endowment fund that's paying good dividends every year. Why do we need to have high degree fees? Why do we need to have high dues? Why do the endowments need to be so high? Everything just pays for itself. When you have that mentality, you just rely on that too much over time. What happens is you start to drain that and you end up with nothing. What the smart thing to do is, even if your lodge has the finances, you put that aside and don't look at it in this scope, right? You don't consider that when you say this is what our dues need to be or anything like that. You look at what your actual operating costs are and go from there. Because when you start looking at these reserves that the guys that came before you built up, a lot of people have this mentality: if that's there, why do I have to pay into it? Even though the guys that came before paid into it and they put the work into it.
Right. We have a welfare mentality.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that people may get upset hearing that, but that's what it is. It's basically a oh dang it, it's generational poverty in the lodges, and we're okay with it because that's what we were taught. And until we reteach our brothers, where it all starts with education. It all starts with education. Yes. And it doesn't matter if it's history or finance or whatever. It all starts with education. That's one of the things that I think is so cool. Well, I'll get to that later when we talk about, hey, Adam, how are you, my brother?
Good,
Glad
how
to
are
see
you?
Man, this chat just got a
Glad
whole
you
lot more
made it.
handsome. Look at that.
I'm telling you. That's that senior warden appeal. He's getting ready for the East, buddy. He's almost there. We got a couple of you brothers almost there, ready to rock and roll. We got three right now that are going to be, if tradition prevails, are going to be masters next year, which is awesome. I am so proud of you guys. Y'all are leading the pack and teaching us how to do it right.
Yeah.
I
So
would
Adam,
also
we're
be
talking.
perfectly happy to be Tyler as well.
There's less chaos and confusion that way, right? So we're talking about endowments and dues just real quickly. It was supposed to be 5 minutes, but of course I can't keep my mouth
we
shut.
never do that.
So,
We never could do that.
but after that, I'd like to jump into value proposition because I think it really will feed right into it.
Well, let
But
me point this out because I think it feeds right into what you want to talk into. Did you have something you want to say real quick
Okay.
though?
Well, the simple fact is, no matter how we slice it, we can look at the data and we can say we're doing well, but numbers don't lie, and we tend to fudge those numbers to fit our own narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start taking an honest look. We are Masons, by the way, right? We're supposed to be straight and narrow, right?
We're supposed to be logical.
Take an honest. We need to take, yes. Imagine that. We talked about it at 1 degrees. We should talk about that. Which, by the way, guys, the Kabbalah video is fixing to come out, and it is an awesome one. Y'all are going to really like it.
It's 2 parts so far.
Going back. Yes. The first part is the best so far.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. But the bottom line is we need to deal with ourselves and deal with what we think the value is for our opportunity. Why we're there. If we're not interested in supporting, we'll do it. What do we do?
Dennis, you're kind of choppy. I don't know if it's me or but you're breaking up.
Yeah, likewise.
I
have the same issue.
Yeah, I saw a slow connection a minute ago. Is it still choppy or is it?
It just picked up. It's like
so it's picked up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me clear this and then I'll close my video. Oh, here, let me just close my video.
Well, you're fine now. It just got spiked.
Well, this will help.
Okay.
This will.
Oh, it definitely got better when you closed the camera.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what happened. We don't want to go into what really caused it. Jason and I talked about it the other night, and that's the reality. No, just kidding. No, but the reality of the lodges is that we need to look at the internal. We make this big beef about it. It's the internal, not the external. Well, we need to get our internal right.
Mm-hmm. We
do need more education. And it starts with educating ourselves internally and what we're supposed to be believing in. We were taught to be free thinkers, number one, and not let anybody else tell us what we need to think. We're supposed to be smart, intelligent people who can think on our own. That was the whole idea of this thing. But with that, we created these boundaries so that we can be strong. So we can be free thinking, but we can be strong at the same time. We created our own boundaries, and those boundaries are not to stop our brain from thinking, but to enhance what we believe in morality and in our character. And if we don't have a strong character, we're never going to have a strong pocketbook.
It's true.
Because we're not going to make the right decisions throughout our whole life that make it possible for us to do the things we want to do and support the people that we want to support.
Mm-hmm.
Last case in point, right before I stop, and then we can go into whatever. I was in a lodge and there was a man that was in need, not a Mason. And we wanted to do some kind of a gift for him. And I stood up and I said, let's give a $250 gift card. $25 from each person that was there, right? That's all it would have taken to help this man out, who has in fact been helping us in another way by cleaning different lodges, cleaning different areas, cleaning all kinds of stuff on his own time. And he's a caterer that we stopped using as a caterer because it was more than what we could get it at some cheap-ass steakhouse down the street. He gave us a quality experience, did it did it with good character, love in his heart, and every time we met, he was there making sure we had refreshments and everything on the house. He just did it because he cared about what we were doing, and we stopped caring about him. And then I asked for $250, and you thought I asked somebody to give their first child.
That's a shame, man.
It's amazing. It's amazing where our characters stand when the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
$25 that I would go out and spend at freaking Dairy Queen for me and my daughter to have dinner and a blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much I pay for me and my daughter alone. Not even with my wife there.
So some people need to go back to that one of those first lessons.
Right. So we need to get ourselves right before we start talking about anything else and get our mindset on where we find the real value, and are we ready to really put up or shut up with this thing we call Freemasonry?
Yeah, it's good. I'll just say,
I'm sorry, guys. It struck me hard. I didn't mean to just lower the mood in the whole room. I can see everybody like, oh shit, here it went.
No, you're spot on.
But all these guys are working. I want everybody to know all these guys are working towards the better. That's why they're here. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to deflate, their spirits at the same time.
Not money, just numbers, math. It doesn't lie. You could do bad math, but when it's consistently the same, it's not lying, correct? So, logic, arithmetic, these things that we're taught to learn early on in our Masonic careers, they don't care about your emotions, right? If I do 2 plus 2 and I really don't want it to be 4, it doesn't matter how I feel. I put it in the calculator.
Exactly.
I get 4. And so you have these lodges that are trying really hard to say 2 plus 2 is 10, but that's not the case. And there was, I'm not going to name names, but there was a brother that posted somewhere online lately, and he's in line. If tradition prevails, that whole thing. He's going to be worship master of the lodge that has a roof falling in, and he's asking for, and really what he's looking for, without saying it, is he's looking for a shortcut, a silver bullet that will take care of this problem, and it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And several brothers gave good suggestions, myself included, honest, logical, tried and true suggestions, and the only ones that he actually responded to it in knowledge were the ones that the guys that have the same pity party as him. And you're never going to fix a problem through that. And it comes back to value, like you said. You don't value the fraternity enough to actually do the hard work it takes to fix things. You want something quick and easy because that's how you value the fraternity. You want a slap job, right? You want to be able to, what's that commercial where he just takes that and slaps it on the hole and it fills it, the tape.
Oh, that tape, black tape that he rides that little boat in.
He puts that boat back together. That's what they want. They just want to slap
We're
that
not
hole.
advertising for him. Don't stop thinking about that. We're not getting residuals from that man.
But since we're talking finances anyway, and we're talking value. When you're a conferring degree, and I actually talked about this with someone earlier today. We are afraid when you provide value to somebody. We have to stop being afraid as a fraternity to stand up for the value that we're providing. And what I mean by that is when we're conferring degrees on somebody, we are doing a service that this man cannot get elsewhere legitimately. No one else can confer Masonic degrees other than a Masonic lodge. And it's a life-changing experience. It should be hard to get, and we are afraid to put any kind of value on this. And you and I have talked about this before. This came up with Brother Nagy when he came on. On average, it takes from the time you get your EA degree to the time you turn your master's work, you're spending about 400 man hours with somebody just
Yep.
learning, not even talking about the questions and answers, just learning the answers to the catechism. 400 man hours. Here
But
in
my life heading towards death is not worth any money to the lodge or to that person who's learning the work. Apparently, I'm just saying.
No, that's if you look at the minimum wage in Texas, it's $7.25. So if you multiply 400 times 7.25, I'll do it again because, like I said, sometimes you got to double check your math, right? That's $2,900. If you divide that by 3, that means every degree should be almost $1,000. Just looking at the man hours and the time put in. And
Yep.
and you say, well, that will run some people off. I'm almost certain it will. Almost certain it will. But the people that really want to join the fraternity, there's this wonderful practice of putting money back, right? And if someone really wanted to join, if they really found the value in Freemasonry, they can make it happen. They would make it happen. I mean, but the reason we don't want to do that, the real reason we want to do that, is because we have lodges that are conferring subpar degrees, and even though they're the only ones that can confer those degrees, they're offering a subpar version of what that guy really could receive. So it takes work on our part too. Like we have to step up.
Oh yeah.
We have to step up. We need to have good degrees and nicer buildings and actual decent food. We might have to serve that cold spaghetti on an actual plate instead of styrofoam, right?
That's right, Reichenberg. keep saying it. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it
I
means
feel the spirit.
we have to
I'm
step
sorry.
up. We have to step up and offer something.
We do.
But if we're saying we are offering a life-changing experience, then that's what we need to actually deliver. And when you say you're going to take a good man and make them better, that's what you're promising. You're promising a life experience, something that they can't get somewhere else, right? Because I got self-help books. I can read those, $30 for a self-help book. So if I'm paying like almost $3,000 to get all my degrees or something like that, and I'm putting the time in and 400 man hours, then
Dude, the church expects $15,000 a year from me. That's what the church expects. And so, how much am I willing to give to my lodge?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They don't ask for it in a big lump sum, but they ask for that amount, that percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much am I willing to give to my lodge? Because in fact, I stated in one of my deals today, they said, they asked if there was any literature out there to help a guy that wants to be a Mason, but he's Christian and he doesn't understand. And of course, you always get the guys in Knights Templar, oh, we're all Christian, blah, blah, and whatever. Mm-hmm. But I stated, really, that's an internal issue with that man. That's something he has to figure out, because we're not a religious order. However, through our teachings, you can become righteous. You can become righteous through our teachings with our character and moral lessons. So, of course, our foundation being on free thinking, the churches don't want us, they don't like us as much as they let on from in some instances, because we're able to become better in this world where we are and learn about that world without having to go there. Yeah. Right? So if we're willing to give them 10 grand a year paying for our salvation that we don't even know is going to happen, which, by the way, I'm Christian, guys. I'm just making my argument. I'm a debater. So we're giving them $15,000 a year to secure our salvation, but we're in Masonry to develop our intellect and our chi. we're coming to develop our mind and spirit as well, and we're not willing to give a little. And the reason, and you're right, we haven't been given everything we need. Our minutes are too long. Our meetings are a bunch of people debating over dumb stuff that, really that's what the job of the committees are, is to come up with the solution and bring it to the lodge to vote on. And then if they don't get it right, send them back. Say, go back to work. You didn't get it right. Don't spend an hour letting two old guys across the room from each other argue about what's right and wrong for the lodge, because that's not how they've always done it. And I say two old guys because it's usually two old guys who remember it in different ways of that's not how we've always done it. And they hold up the lodge and kill the spirit of everyone in that lodge, and it just drains the momentum. So, we got to increase our value and increase ourselves and be stronger in mind and spirit for our brothers, and just do a better job in general. Once we start doing that, we start expecting it of each other, I think more brothers will keep coming back.
Yeah. So you are being quiet tonight. Does anyone have any thoughts they want to add to that?
I do.
Been too vocal.
Basically, so like this kind of conversation kind of started because I was talking about my MWSA, and Zachary Haston came out, and basically he talked about endowments and dues and raising degree fees. He said that $300 degree fees doesn't really change like the statistics of how many members are actually petitioning the lodge still.
That's exactly right.
But if a brother is going to come in there, or a mister is going to come in there and pay $300, and he shows up to lodge, and all we're doing is talking about business, the two old guys back and forth, it's cheapening the experience, and he may not continue on.
Exactly.
But if you come in there with education, like you were talking about, it's a completely different experience that brings them back. And that was my experience anyway.
It's amazing how little the bickering is when you're well funded. It is. I just want to point that out. It's amazing how less people argue when you're well funded.
I've attended some Masonic events, mainly like dinner functions and things.
And then Jason's next after that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't see. But it'd be like at least $100 a plate kind of thing, right? And you're wearing a nice suit or a tuxedo. People are showing up, and there's none of this. There's none of this complaining and fussing and arguing about the price of things or anything like that. That's where those functions are where the best Masonic conversations take place, right? Because there's none of this nonsense. Because these are people that have value in the fraternity. They actually have something intelligent to contribute. And so you're talking about cheapening the experience. This doesn't happen in these events. It doesn't happen. And I say
exactly.
Events, but why does it have to be events? Why can't it be my stated meeting? Why can't it be when I go to the lodge? We're having intelligent, highbrow conversations instead of griping about the leak or who's going to fix the light. All right, I'm sorry.
It should be well-rounded. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so apparently my reputation at Guadalupe Lodge was too high, so I decided to wade into what we need to do with dues and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, one of the in our discussions, because we've pretty much been talking about it all year, but one of the discussion points that a past master brought up, been around for a long time, and he was endowed, and he bought, one of those $500 endowments from, in the early 80s and all that kind of stuff. And what he said was, he's like, look, he's like, I understand what the situation is now. He said, but back then, he said, we were told that this is how we were going to secure our lodge's future. As in, they didn't do it to be cheap, or, well, now I just don't have to pay dues anymore or anything like that. He said a lot of them, they thought that this is what was going to save their lodge, that establish it for the long term and stuff like that. And then if you actually look at, so our current endowment right now is at $1,200. Um, most of it, obviously, most of them are at the $500 level because of the whole rush that they did. But if you actually look at inflation from back then, they actually paid about 14, maybe $1,500.
Yes.
So they were. It was not like this was not just some. Well, I have $500 in my back pocket. Here you go, and now I don't have to pay. Like this was a significant investment
Mm-hmm.
on their part. Now, obviously, over time, circumstances change as things shake out a little bit different, and when you have new information, you need to relook at what's happening. But to come at them and say, "Well, you guys just threw out $500 and decided that you didn't need to help support it financially anymore or anything like that," is not the right approach. I have found
Mm-hmm.
because now that past master because he has because some of us kind of took a step back and instead of throwing rocks at these older members and saying, well, now you guys are ruining the lodge now because you won't pay anymore. You kind of have to understand what their mindset was. For a lot of them was that I'm going to fork out at that time, which was a significant amount of money. I mean, not $500 is not cheap, but still, I mean, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It you know we're gonna we are investing in our lodge. We're gonna secure the future, and this is gonna be a great thing with and stuff like that. But now he sees what the numbers are and stuff like that, and of course he's more supportive of it, and and we are talking to some of the older members that okay, maybe you don't pay dues anymore, but maybe consider buying additional uh, whatever they call it, points or
The
whatever
units.
on the
Units.
endowment, and allotments, whatever. Anyway, invest more in your endowment, or could you help pay for, make a donation or anything like that? And he actually has. He actually donated money to help in the short term and stuff like that. But I think when you start to talk about this stuff, don't just immediately assume that they were just trying to be cheap and
Mm-hmm.
and not pay dues anymore. They really were told, and I think a lot of them out of what they felt was like a really good thing for their lodge, that they were going to help secure that future.
Agreed.
Go
Adam.
ahead, Adam.
Um, so, just my opinion. What is Freemasonry in as few words as possible? 1, fraternalism. 2, education / self-improvement. 3, Masonic charity. I say specifically Masonic charity. And then 4, ritual, right? The most important out of all of those is the fraternalism. If the brethren in the lodge don't like each other, if they aren't friends with each other, if they don't get along, then the lodge just won't work. It doesn't matter how good the rest of it is. So if you have a lodge where they just have 12 stated meetings a year, or they have 24 stated meetings a year, whatever it is, and that's all they do, plus maybe some degrees, then I would say that lodge's dues should be $80. If that's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe if they have a presentation during their stated meeting, an educational one, maybe if their degrees are really fantastic, maybe if they put on some other events throughout the year, that's different. But you can only make a stated meeting so much worth going to, because really the point of it is business, right? It's a stated business meeting. So I think it's like a pretty much a systemic problem in Texas and maybe most of the United States, where we are just categorically focusing on our stated business meetings and we don't know what else to do. And I think it's really a quality over quantity type of thing. Because if you don't have to be a quarterly lodge, quote unquote, like St. Albans or some other lodges that are like that, or like Robert Burns. You don't have to be like that. But if your lodge meets 6 times a year or 5 times a year, or I think the minimum is 4 to literally be quarterly, there's so many other events and things that your lodge can do. You could have an annual dinner for your past masters. You could have a breakfast every year for your Golden Trowel recipients. You could have a dinner or a big event for all the people for Lamar Awards if you do that. I'm saying it all surrounded by food as someone who likes food, but we all like food, right? That's something we can all get behind. Um, or something really unique to your lodge, like Washington Lodge in Navasota. Every year they have that one meeting in Washington on the Brazos at Independence Hall, right? That's their one unique thing they do. There's plenty of lodges that can do stuff like that. But I think as long as lodges just focus on those stated business meetings, no matter how good you can make your stated business meeting, it can only be so good. And probably, I haven't been to one of their stated business meetings, but probably the best in the state, or one of the best, has to be Hillcrest, where they have their stated business meetings. And my understanding is that after that, they all go out afterwards, and they have a great night together. So they've achieved like probably peak fraternalism that a lodge can have, right? And so it's like, even if you're not good at everything else, which they may be,
Crap. I can
as
hear
long
a
as you have
child's
that
head
fraternal
getting
thing.
bigger.
Yeah.
hear-
Well, I mean, I think it's true. He's on the membership committee for Grand Lodge for a reason. And I think it's, I don't
You're
know.
right.
That's my opinion anyway.
No, I agree. I've been there
I
before
agree
in their good
wholeheartedly.
lodge.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. In fact, and I've said it here a few times on our show, that recently we've started a new thing at our lodge down in Corpus, which is it's an education. We have 2 stated meetings a month, and so the second one we have done it to where we do the business within 15 minutes. We call to refreshment, and then we do a floor school. And then after the floor school, I give a presentation on whatever we just did. We take a deep dive on whatever we just did. This next one's going to be fellowcraft. So they're going to get introduced to Kabbalah a little bit in this floor school, which a lot of them will probably be uncomfortable. However, we're going to dip our toes just a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing to try to increase the value in the lodge. And then we call back up and then close. Now, I really love the fact that Hillcrest goes out after dinner. But I really also think that we could do it a different way, and instead of starting at 7, instead of starting at 7:30, start at 7, and not have a dinner, and have say 7, because I wouldn't be able to get there if it's before 7. But not have a dinner then, have all that, and have a dinner after, so we could discuss all our stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the stuff that we go through. That's what makes that Hillcrest idea so great, is that they're discussing things after lodge. They're not doing it in the meeting. You know, if they want to talk about this, some guys are talking about this, some about this, some about that. So everybody gets their, cup filled in what they want to, indulge in that lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm trying to, once we get this really on the ground and going, I would really like to see this go to every stated meeting with us. I think that it would bring value, especially for a 2-meeting lodge a month, being able to do that and run that efficiently. And like I said, if you have your committee members bring the ideas to you, you vote yes, no, and then send them back off for more work with the information that you gave them during that vote, then you're not wasting a bunch of time with people arguing, and you're getting to the education that's going to save that lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it's going to save that lodge, because brothers they will feel like they're leaving with more than they came with.
Yep.
And that's the value proposition, is leaving with more than you came with, no matter where you go.
I've always said that an active lodge is a healthy lodge is a busy lodge, right? And it's not just busy for the sake of being busy, but it's along the lines of what Adam's talking about. You actually are doing things. You're bringing the fraternity closer together. You're building those relationships in your lodge by actually doing things. And when you see lodges doing that, they're the lodges that are growing. They're the lodges that are actually doing well for themselves. We talk a lot about education, and we talk about education, how important it is to have it whenever you can. And I'm not by any means saying don't do education during a stated meeting. However, a stated meeting is a business meeting. It's a business meeting. It's meant. It is.
You obviously weren't listening. We called refreshment, and then we do our education. It's not business. We finished the business. We've taken 15 minutes to do all the business, and we've called it to refreshment, and then we do whatever we want to do, and then we go back to closing the lodge, and that's it.
But I'm not
So
talking about you,
you can
or your
you
lodge.
can say it's all business, but if you can shorten that business effectively, then you can do more than just business. It does not have to be just business.
Well, I was about to say that also, right? Like you could still fit business in, because a extended meeting should not be a long meeting by any means. You can fit education in there, but if you want to get I don't know. I think for a stated meeting, really 20 minutes, 25 minutes, that's maybe pushing as far as education goes. I mean, maybe you disagree with me as far as like time goes, but you don't.
We're doing 20 minutes of or 30 minutes of floor school,
mm-hmm.
and then 20 minutes of Masonic education.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just you're doing two different kinds of education, feeding both the lodge itself and feeding the individual.
Yeah. But to be clear, I'm just talking about. I understand what you're saying in your situation that you're doing at your lodge, and I applaud it. And I'm not saying anything. I think that's great. I'm just talking about your generic stated meetings across the state, right? Like
right.
You're trying something new, and that's great.
The typical.
Yes, I'm talking about typical here, and that is good. We should be willing to experiment and try new things. I'm talking about your standard stated meeting across the state, like any education is better than no education. That's what I'm getting at. But if you really want to really drive home, you need to do things like what you're talking about, or be willing to experiment with events that are solely geared towards having education in your lodge, if you really want to really bring that home. But it doesn't have to just be education.
I think it starts with that. It doesn't end with that. But the education, you have to get everybody on board first, and that you have to educate them. The only way to change anybody's mind, even in sales, the only way to change anyone's mind is educate them. You have to educate them on all the reasons why they would be an idiot not to do what you're talking about doing. That's the truth. That's why we're bringing this value proposition to the floor. We're going to educate them and bring them up, and we're going to bring each other up together so that we create those bonds together, instead of everybody going their separate ways and getting it elsewhere. We're trying to do it together, and that's the goal. Because Adam was right. Fraternalism is key.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are a fraternity.
Yeah. And
if we're not doing stuff together, we're failing together. If we're not doing good stuff together, we're definitely failing together.
Well, if you don't like each other, everything else just falls apart, right?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I real quick, because we kind of skipped over what Jason was saying.
Mm-hmm.
What Jason was saying, he moved on me. I can appreciate what you're saying about the old fella, and the old fella's been there a long time, doing a lot of stuff and held that lodge together. I'm not even talking about the old fella. You know, he's put in his time, and he's put a lot of work into that lodge to keep it around so that you could come to lodge and do your part now. You're not in your old age anymore. You're in the prime. You're in that window, right? You don't want the non-age, and we don't want the old age, right? We want the right in our prime. And so you're that guy. So he's already done his part, and so we can't really, it's not really, in my opinion, right for us to ask those guys. And you're right, they were sold a different bill of goods.
Yeah.
But and they paid handsomely for it, and that was good for the lodges at the same time, because the dues were low too.
Mm-hmm.
So that extra, it ended up being an extra $20-$30 going to the lodge, and that covered the dues as well. So that was good for the lodge.
Yeah.
Now, what we're dealing with is the only good that our endowment system is doing right now, having the minimum set at 500 and lodges taking advantage of that. The only support they're giving is to Grand Lodge. It is no longer about the lodges. It's only about Grand Lodge, and Grand Lodge is doing great.
Mm-hmm.
They've got money. So we have to be willing to to look at where the money really is going and what it really is for, it's not necessarily to keep our lodge alive, because right now, under the same rules and regulations, it's only supporting Grand Lodge, and they leave it at 500 because it makes it easy for people to support Grand Lodge, right? I hate to say that, because I'm one of the guys who likes to work within Grand Lodge and make things better, right? But unless y'all are educated, we're not going to. So right now, when it stays artificially low, we're only supporting Grand Lodge. We're not supporting our lodges. So we have to make that distinction and understand that it is good for Grand Lodge. They're doing great, and they're going to be around way longer than we will ever be around if we keep doing this.
I noticed earlier that Dennis pointed out that originally the endowments were about 15 times dues in their inception.
That was the goal.
And then Jason pointed out, if you do the inflation calculations, $500 in the 80s at that time would be about $1,500 today. The average dues across the state is probably at $100. So that totally coincides with your, if that, but
that's average in your more. That's average in your more populous areas. Mm-hmm. It's not average in your rural areas, which makes up a shit ton of Texas.
Well, I'm just saying that if you consider that as an average,
we're talking 50 to 75 in rural areas. So yeah. I'm just throwing that out there.
No,
that's the reality.
I'm just kind of broadly.
That's why they're having a hard time. But you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
And so that's just to the point. So yeah, I mean, $500. $500 today, still a good chunk of change, but at the time of inception, that was equivalent 15 times our dues today. It was 15 times the dues back then. And I also want to point out, yeah, it's by no means. Well, this is not about casting stones at anybody that endowed, because I agree wholeheartedly. They were sold something that, and I don't think it was anything nefarious on anyone's end. Just no one really knew how things would play out, right? But they were sold something that, what are we, like 40 years down the road now, is not working out as was planned. And it's not that anybody was trying to cheat anybody or anything like that. And so I don't have any ill feelings towards anyone that endowed back in the 80s or even the 90s or even early 2000s. And I've had people before where we gave the talk and they're like, well, I was told when I endowed and I had to pay again. And all these, they list off all the promises, and they, genuinely look hurt. Like, man, I thought I did a good thing, and what do you tell a person like that, right? You thought you did a good thing for the lodge, and you did it with good intentions, right? But I'm just saying, here's the numbers, right? Like, we could still fix it. I'm not casting stones at anybody, but we have to be honest with ourselves too.
It goes back to what I was saying earlier about it being the internal, with our character and our morals that we have to develop through education, right? Mm-hmm. So the men that created the endowments, and I'm not going to say anything about Leonard P. Harvey. He was a great man, did great things, and that endowment program was a great thing that happened during his year.
Absolutely.
The thing is that was created by men of good character, good moral values. They had good moral fiber, right? Now, here we are 50 years later, or 40 years later, 45 years later. Mm-hmm. Are we the same men? If we are, then we would look at what their intent was, and we would follow that intent within our lodges. Yep. Because Grand Lodge isn't going to do it because they're still making money. But the lodges aren't, so the lodges have to look at that and make that decision. Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard for people, but an endowment isn't something that's just supposed to be your ride to your gravy train to the end of the road. It was never meant to be that. It was supposed to be a real contribution. It's something you had to think about. Mm-hmm. When I go and join the lodge and I can just write a check and throw it on the table and say, yep, I'm joining and I'm done for eternity. Mm-hmm. That's too low. It should be something I have to contemplate and think about and and really crunch numbers maybe for a couple of months or whatever to make that money happen, or even a year, putting $100 away a month a year for a full year to gain that, that type of to present that type of moral fiber that it takes to make that kind of a decision.
And to your
So
point,
I think it's all about the internal, not the external.
and when this was created, I keep going back to the 15 times. That was a smart number. It was wisely
Yes.
implemented. 15 times. If it had stayed, and to my point, I guess, if it had stayed 15 times the average dues across the state, it wouldn't be. It still would have, nothing's perfect, right? But a lot of lodges would be a lot more comfortable than they are now. They wouldn't be as worried.
Real quick before Adam, you're right. But the thing is that we don't even have our dues properly set.
You're right.
So our dues have to be properly set for that to work properly as well. It's a domino effect. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's a good point. When it comes to blue lodges, individual blue lodges in the Grand Lodge of Texas, I have only ever heard people talk about how the endowments have hurt the lodges. I have never once heard someone say our endowment program has done so much good for our lodge. And a number that I heard you guys saying 15 times, a number that I heard, which I'm not a mathematician, I didn't come up with it, but I've heard other people say it, is that 22 times your dues is really what your endowment should be. That leaves enough room to cover your dues as well as the amount that your lodge has to pay, your per capita to Grand Lodge, And then also, eventually at some point, your lodge is going to raise its dues in the future, whenever that may be. And so you're still going to be alive. And when your lodge raises its dues and you're still alive and you have an endowment, technically that's hurting, your lodge, that you're still alive.
You should buy more units.
Yeah.
You should, but you're not obligated to.
Right.
And so 22 times kind of gives a bit of a buffer. In my opinion, though, I think the endowment system, at the end of the day, unless your lodge is very good about raising the endowment far past what it should be to sustain your lodge, I think it only really helps Grand Lodge. Because and two solutions could be a really radical one, just do away with the endowment system, which I don't think anyone would really be for. Or another one is that, yeah, you can get an endowment, but it doesn't exempt you from dues. Sorry. But I've never once heard someone say, yeah, the endowment program is amazing. It has helped our lodge more than hurt it. It's the best thing we've ever had. So I don't really know what to say about it other than it's like a net negative for individual lodges. That's the way
I think you're onto something there. I think it doesn't exempt you from dues, but let's put a different swag on it and say, okay, you buy this many units, however many units you buy, that's what's going to be deducted from your dues payment, and then you'll just owe the rest. That simple. It's not hard. We all know what if you're a junior warden to secretary treasurer, what everybody is paying with their units. So what you could actually achieve by asking them to pay out what the rest of what their dues are every year.
Well, I got the perfect solution, and I see Daniel's got his hand up. But real quick, if you remember, there was a resolution for Golden Trials to have your own special apron. So whenever you buy a unit, you get a little pin that you put on the endowment apron, and that way you could flaunt it for everybody, right? And maybe
that's the answer. That's the answer.
Maybe even give it little phallic shapes that we can say I'm more endowed than anybody in the state.
Well, that would would also show who the ones are that are just riding the coattails of everybody else. Because if they don't have their extra pins, if they don't have enough, what's that movie? If they don't have enough, y'all know it. It's Office Space.
Enough flair, Dennis.
Flair. Yes. If you don't have enough flair, you just aren't into it. So you'll be able to tell who's really into it by how much flair they have.
There you go. All right, Daniel, did you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to say, brothers, I think this is a great point. I love the idea of hey, we're raising our dues. Can you pay for X number of additional units into your endowment because that's going to help our lodge, right? I think the conversation ultimately is what's our why behind why do we join Freemasonry? What do we want out of it? Is our lodge providing that? The brothers that are old that have been there, they've done lots of great work. That's wonderful. Why are they? What are they doing to help the younger brothers now? Right? Are they giving them the runway to make it great? Are they giving them the runway to say, yes, we've been here. Yes, this is my wise counsel. Yes, I want the lodge to continue and to build upon and not just be the legacy that the brothers built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I want that legacy to go on and be forward for our great grandchildren, right? And that's what we have to think about it. Because when they built the Grand Lodge of Texas in 47, 49, that building was built with people who didn't have a huge amount of money. We look at a lot of the lodges from the 60s, the 50s, 60s, right? They're still standing today. We're on the coattails of those great brothers who did all of that.
Oh yeah,
some of those brothers are still around. But are we building a legacy that our grandchildren are going to have, that their grandchildren are going to have? We're not willing to part, back to Dennis's point, with $25 to make somebody's life a little better. We're going to argue about that. And, at the end of the day, we have to think about it that way. It's a legacy that we're leaving behind, that Masonry was given to us, and we need to give it to someone else.
And that's probably one of the most difficult things for us to teach. And the reason why is because we live in a throwaway society. We don't keep anything anymore. In fact, products aren't made to be kept anymore. We live in a society that if you have a computer more than 3 years, you're behind in the times, which I'm holding on to mine. It's crackling and crunching. That's probably why I'm so, chopped up every once in a while. But the reality is we live in a throwaway society. And so when we bring these brothers in and, they come out of this throwaway society and we have artificially cheap dues and endowments and the value within our lodge, then we're just showing we're just another throwaway part of the world. So use us up now. Who cares if we're here after? So it goes back to your legacy, and you're right. That's very important. I'd like to bring up something real quick. And I thought about this earlier. It's something that my current worshipful master in Goliad is starting, which I love it. Our current senior warden, Adam Olivier over here, he's starting one right now, which is beautiful, and I love it. I've been talking to our past sovereign master and education committee chairman at Scottish Rite about taking over his old newsletter. And I think it's a great, great plan. And I'm going to be a contributor to the newsletter for Goliad. And I think that not only does it increase value, but we can use it in another way. So our worshipful master, Chris, he was talking to me about it last night, and he was saying, well, how can we get to people? Because we have some emails, yes, but how do we get to those people without emails? The only way is mail. And I said, well, yeah, you would have to sort it out and decide, okay, these guys are going to get it by mail, these guys are going to get it by email. And he said, well, how can we tell who's elderly and who's not that may be in a home or whatever? And I said, well, we can get that data from Grand Lodge. You have the data as far as, people's ages and stuff in your system. But really, I think, and this is something that I'm going to offer up once we really get this thing off the road. Think about this, guys, all you brothers that have newsletters out there. So the email is the most cost-effective way to do it. See if you have a brother who is willing to donate the amount of postage for the other brothers who are elderly that don't show up to lodge anymore. The younger guys, they're going to get that email, or they're going to see it on Facebook. They're going to see it in other ways. But think about your, 60 plus old members, right? Or you could even drop it down to 50, or just hell. Just say all the guys who don't have email registered in the system. And it makes me sick that our senior warden just left. All the guys that aren't in the system, see if you have one or two guys that are willing to donate postage and you can go and get a cheaper rate with your post office if you try to. You just go and talk to them and tell them what you're trying to do, and tell them you're trying to reach people at the old folks home, and they're willing to help you. I guarantee you. It may not be next day or second day or whatever, but who cares if it's a week or two later? They're getting nothing right now, right? So send this newsletter out to these guys. And how many of those guys, you want to talk about charity? How many of these brothers that are in the nursing home, if they get a newsletter from their lodge, would just think that was the bee's fucking knees? Excuse me. Oh, I took it too far on that one. They would think it was the bee's knees, and they would tell their family as they come in, and then maybe their family would start thinking about, what we do. And not only that, but it just supports them and makes them realize that they're thought of even after, they're unable to contribute.
There's some
talk about value.
There's some comments real quick. I see Adam. Let me just kind of been neglecting the comments here on YouTube. I just want to hit a few of them real quick.
Oh, I forgot one.
Brad was asking over on YouTube, are lodges allowed to make their own endowment? And then later he changed it to investment funds. If by endowment you mean you pay X amount and no one ever has to pay again, no. But you could definitely have investment funds. But I will say this: most financial advisors that are established, they have a minimum set for like new accounts, and most lodges probably don't have that. I would say
you need to build it up in a money market first, and then convert your $30,000 over to an investment later.
Well, a lot of them won't even take 30. The minimum, from my experience, like the good ones, is like 100,000. You can maybe it depends. Like you could probably take it to someone at 30, but you're not really going to see serious returns or anything like that. Like a real actively managed account until you get to like 100,000 or something. So if you take 30,000 to like a financial advisor and you're expecting that to take care of, you're still going to need to contribute to it regardless of where it's at. But the lodges that have the dividends coming in off the investment accounts, they have substantially more than 100,000, and that's covering different things, but it's not replacing dues or anything like that. But you could. I would just say you want to build that up before you really start looking for an advisor or anything like that. Sorry, Adam. What you got?
Just to say about financial advisors and whatnot, in the Brazos Valley in Brazos County, we do have a few brothers that are financial advisors at Sol Ross Lodge, and the funds that Sol Ross Lodge has are managed, or a good portion of them are managed by them. And then there's a few other lodges that they have much less money, but they've made the wise decision of investing some of their money with these financial advisors, and they're in different accounts, and their minimum was I think it's like $3,000. So it's a lot lower, but that is like a really good thing to do. Just saying that. But to what Dennis was saying earlier in regards to a newsletter, I am writing something. I'm not sure if you could call it a newsletter, because it's not like news of my lodge or anything, but a newsletter for your lodge is a really good thing to do. Especially if you have members that aren't active, and maybe they're even in your area and they don't show up. And if you could send that to them every month or however often you publish it, and say, hey, this is what our lodge has done. Look at this degree we did. Here's a picture from this and from that. That's a really good thing. Or maybe if you have an article written about someone that's a bit more abstract too, and they could enjoy that as well. I know I used to work on the newsletter for the Houston Valley of the Scottish Rite, and I had a lot of older brethren that they couldn't normally get to the Scottish Rite, or they couldn't even normally get to their blue lodges, but they would email me and say, I enjoy this so much, and so Dennis, I definitely think that's a good thing.
Well, it comes back to value, right? Just because you are unable to get out of the house, or because you are out of the state, or you had to do something with your family, we should still try to include them in that value in any way we can, right? Sometimes you have to meet people where they are, and a lot of lodges have this mentality. Like look at most lodges group chats. It's like if a lodge has a group chat, right, or just a group conversation, there's maybe 10, 15 people at the most. Well, how many people are actually in that lodge? Why are you only really trying to make an effort to communicate with this 10, 15 people when you have this lodge with a large roster? And so it's because those are the people that are showing up, right? We need to, like, just because you're showing up, that's great, but that doesn't mean that you're the only people entitled to the value that this lodge can offer. So I really like that idea of creating that email or finding some way to reach out to these guys and say, look, this is what we're doing. If you could be here, that's great. Here's what we decided. Here's what we learned. Here's an excerpt from our education. This is what's coming up. And just reaching out to them, because we have to meet them where they are. We don't just meet them at the lodge. We meet them where they are too.
Well, that's the whole idea. And within our newsletter, we do exactly that. We even tell everybody's Masonic birthdays and stuff like that. We tell them what's happening in the lodge, and then we give a little education piece. But in fact, we give two, a light one, and then mine is. But we do.
Aren't they all light?
And I still don't go. Okay, here we go.
That took you longer. I'm getting kind of disappointed how long that took you, Dennis.
So, but you're absolutely right. When you get to the people that are out there they're number one, really appreciative. But some of these guys, maybe they've moved and they haven't thought about Masonry in years. And you send it to them and they think all of a sudden, oh, why don't I start going to lodge here? And they find a lodge. How bad would that be? Just getting brothers to want to come back just because they start thinking, hey, this lodge is doing all this. I wonder what this lodge here is doing. That might be cool to jump back in. Mm-hmm. If you're a really active lodge and you're putting it out there for those guys that aren't making it, that could be really cool. I think we're on to something pretty good here.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, activity is the lifeblood, and you're not just doing activity just for mindless, but it's anything you do should be deliberate and intentional, right? So if we are going to, so there's a local lodge in a town nearby, and someone has just opened a bourbon and cigar place downtown, and so there's been conversations of, hey, we should do something down there outside the lodge. That's great, but we need to be deliberate, and by that I mean we need to reach out to people that are in our, what we want to do. Like, is it for fraternity? Do we want to be sure everyone in our lodge knows? I mean, they should know anyway, but we really want to focus on that. Is this to attract new people? I'm down for it, right? But we need to say this is what our goal is overall, because that's how we need to pitch it at the same time. But anytime you do something like that, if it's about the fraternalism, then dude, just be sure everybody knows and find a way to get them there, right? And it's all important. If you just want to do it to be seen, that's great, but be sure you're posting and taking pictures. These are all good practices, but I'm just saying be more mindful depending on what you're trying to do. But most places, I mean, I'm relatively rural, not as rural as Dennis, but I'm kind of out in the country. But most places have things nearby that you could do, or brothers have property. You say, hey, we'll go out to, for example, when I went to St. Albans Lodge several years ago, I didn't know what to expect, and I've shared their story before. I went to the meeting, and it was a great meeting. It was a business meeting, but as far as business meetings go, it was good and concise and enjoyable. And I'm trying to leave, and Pete Norman's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I was like, I'm leaving. He's like, no, we go eat after this. You're coming. And so I didn't really have a choice. I went and ate dinner, and I'm ready to go again after dinner. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, we have cigars and drinks at my house after this. And so they hog-tied me and took me to that, right? And so they have these things outside the meetings, and
they don't usually do that. Pete just knew you had a long drive and wanted to make you suffer. That's what it was.
So it's just these kind of things. The fact that I'm talking about it almost 10 years later tells me that should say that it had an impact. Right?
Yeah.
And same thing with Hillcrest. Someone mentioned Hillcrest, they go out. I remember going out. Like, I don't remember anything they talked about in the meeting, But I remember going out after that and enjoying the fellowship with my brothers. Same thing with Knob Creek in Temple. They got a really nice pub right across the street, and there's just as much value going to that pub and hang out after as there is in the meeting because of the fraternal aspect that you're building and associate with these people. And so I mean, I'm referring to like pubs and things, but there's all kinds of events that you could do that would help still bring you closer to your brothers, and they don't have to involve pubs or anything like that. You could do Top Golf, or you could do cigars, or you can go out and do skeet shooting or something like that. Play pool, play dominoes. There's a lot of options, but the point is you have to do this because, like Adam said, if all you're doing is business meetings, yeah, you might as well charge the minimum because no one's going to get any value out of what you're doing anyway.
Here's the challenge for all of our listeners and all of course, our inner circle. Here's the challenge. Think about where you found your most value in any situation in Masonry. Think about what you remember today that impacted you, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, however long it was. I remember my commandery degree, my Knight Templar, and that made an impression on me. It made an impression on me. Now today, do I feel exactly the same about, the order with all the drills and all that? Maybe not. However, the degree, man, blew me away. So what do I think? I think every degree should have an impact like that on my life, in the brother's life around me. And if we're trying to create that, if we're helping our fraternity, we're gaining something from it. We're enhancing our own lives as we're helping the next guy come in the door. So we're doing better for our lodge by doing better for that new brother.
If only our EA degree had those memento mori aspects.
Right. But the bottom line is, and let's get off the degrees because I don't want to beat that dead horse because we've been there 1,000 times as well as this conversation really. But this is fitting right now because we're going into election year and you can't raise endowments at any time except for installation time. Correct. So guys, if y'all are being installed and y'all are thinking about it, ask some guys to go ahead and put that for motions because you can't do anything about it any other time in the year because that's when most of your members are showing up. That's why they said it there. I guarantee you that's why they said it there. But anyways, bottom line, I challenge everyone to think about where they have received the most value, whether it be just a simple letter in the mail. Man, the first letter that I ever received with a wax stamp on it, I was blown away. It's like, oh yeah, I don't care how much it cost me to get to this, I'm going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I was there, and I've never missed another meeting since. And I've gotten others like that as well, and I've never missed another meeting since because I saw that they thought enough that they tapped into my curiosity. They tapped into my, let's call it what it is, my mysticism, and I'm all in. Mm-hmm. And once I got there, I wasn't disappointed. They didn't sell me short on just the letter. So don't take it like that. Everyone has always been pristine. But the thing is that there's little things along the way that make a difference. That you could really, and like the letter, even if you had the nice sticker, with the emblem of your lodge or something, you throw out a letter to all your old members or whatever with that newsletter and put that sticker on there. Just make it something a little bit special. And or if you're inviting past masters, do the same thing. Put a little past master sticker on there or something just to make it special, or a wax seal.
What would have more impact? A guy gets voted in to receive the degrees, and some guy calls him, "Hey, when's a good time?" Or a few days later, he gets a mysterious envelope with a nice thick wax seal with a square and compass.
You will show up at this time.
Yes, I was going to say that.
You will not knock on the door. You wait until someone comes to get you.
I was just going to have a nice card stock, and it simply says Monday, 7 p.m. Masonic Lodge. dress appropriately or
Yes.
something like that, and just leave it at that. And you're like, oh crap, what is this, right? There's no asking, because you already spoke with this guy, right? You should already know what nights are good for him, right? Part of the
And
investigation process.
nobody sees him except for the master of ceremonies, who goes and gets him, takes him up to the lodge for the degree, and then everybody's there during the degree in a black suit and tie.
Yeah, and this is why
I had to make my black suit.
And this is
But
why
everybody, and then he opens his eyes and he sees where he is, and it's like, oh, wow! Talk about an impression.
But that's the reason I'm so in favor of doing meals and stuff after the degree,
And
right?
then
Because he's not sitting in there listening to
dinner
everybody hee
after the
haw.
degree.
Yeah, he's taking, like, everybody's already in the lodge room, right? He's showing up. We know he's going to show up at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever. We're already in the lodge room. You can even have lodge already open, and this guy comes in. He goes straight into and starts the process, right? And you're good. Like, it's solemn. He doesn't know what's going on. There's nobody like, oh, don't worry about it. We all did this. Here's a bucket full of pennies. Don't lose them, right? That kind of thing. So we've all seen it, right? But he just goes right into it.
We've seen it, but those are the secrets we don't talk about.
Oh,
Come on.
okay. Makes sense.
But yeah. So think about it. In doing something like that, with the guy, you haven't done anything but enhance the experience with a card.
Mhm.
You haven't done anything to cost the lodge any more than maybe $5 or $10. And once you buy that wax seal for $15 or whatever, then the wax is cheap, and you get your glue gun and you just do it to it. It's a cheap process. Then you're only talking about $1 per nice card or whatever for the card stock.
Can you run a candle through a glue gun? I guess that would work, wouldn't it?
I don't use a candle.
What do you use?
Well,
do they make with just wax?
If you were important, you would know.
Well,
Yes,
I've got
they make-
wax seal things, but
They actually make wax sticks for glue guns.
I did not know that. Okay, I just
Yes, they
assumed
do.
they
Yes,
always
they
use candles. Well, that
Call
just
me and I'll give you
cheapens
some other
that
tips.
cheapens the whole experience for me now that I know. Jason says he's got something because he's moving with purpose.
So
Nice.
exactly.
Nice.
Hey Jason, if you get you a little dish with that's the regular wax brick. If you get you a little dish,
What's that spoon for?
and that's for the wax.
Oh,
That's to heat
okay.
up the wax. If you'll shut up for a second, if you get you a little dish and put a little bit of ice and water in that dish, and let your stamp sit in there before you stamp it, and what you do is you take it out, touch a cloth so that it gets it dry, and then stamp it, then the wax won't stick in your stamp.
That makes sense.
So exactly, I saw that, and I've got that T-shirt, man. I wasted $100 one day trying to figure out how to stamp stupid envelopes. So, but just think about this, guys. If you did that, and then afterwards, so let's step back a second. Let's talk about value. So for any of the degrees, insert degree here, they get just a letter that says show up at this time at the lodge. Show up at the lodge at this time. Or you are summoned to the Masonic Lodge, whatever Masonic Lodge, at this time. Do not knock, do not enter, just stand there. And then, of course, you come and get them, just one person, and do the little talk that you got to talk. You got a book you should read to them. And you should read that. Don't do that stupid, that microfilm from, 1930s. But anyways, and then you do your degree. Everybody's in a suit and a tie, dark suit. Doesn't have to be black, but just dark tie, dark suit, because that's going to make a difference in the degree. And if you've been in one, you know. And then afterwards, you don't have your lodge cook anything or make anything. You set the time for 5:00 p.m. on a Saturday. And I know it takes a little bit from your family or whatever. We all have family, but we can plan for things. We don't have to do it the next weekend after they give their proficiency, right? So you can plan for it, set the date. And once you start doing these practices, more people will show up because they're thinking this is a cool experience. And then you'll get visitors start showing. I guarantee you. So set the date, do all that, start at 5 p.m. so you're not rushed. Everything can be mysterious. Everything can be a cool experience. And then afterwards, go out to dinner to a nice restaurant. Everybody pays for their own food, but it's a nice restaurant where you can have conversation. Try to get a room if you can. If you've got 20 guys, you can probably get a room and make the minimum for that room just with, dinner and drinks. So do that. Have another member give a small presentation afterwards, real small, just enough to kick off the conversation for everybody, like a 15-minute presentation, nothing big, to kick off the conversation, and then let brothers stand up one at a time to be recognized and give and say what they have to say. Don't have a bunch of talking within the crowd or whatever. One brother at a time. And then you'll also get more participation because people aren't talking sidebar. They're waiting for their turn so they can get up and say what they got to say, because there are people like Dennis that just have to say something. So anyways, tell me that experience.
And keep in mind, this is also a time of celebration at the same time, because you're celebrating bringing this new guy in. You're not just saying bye after the degree, good luck processing everything. And
during the whole process, you're doing toasts, and at the end, your final toast is to that brother.
Yep.
Well, your final toast is to end the night, but the toast before is to that brother. There's a meeting that I do that we name it a certain thing and we have a certain theme, and we'll toast to that thing at the end of that meeting each time. And whatever it is, it changes, but we toast to that brother or that person at the end of the meeting each time. And so that would be your time to toast to them, and then you would do your toast to close the evening.
Yep.
So go ahead, Adam. Sorry, I that was a big thought in an even bigger time. Sorry about that.
I love everything you just said, and I'm sorry for speaking so much tonight. I love what you guys are talking about.
That's why y'all here for, man.
Dennis, I love everything you just said, and I just want to take it one step further. So imagine that brother gets that for his EA degree, and he gets that for his fellowcraft degree, and he gets that, maybe even better, for his Master Mason's degree.
Yeah.
And then he shows up to his first stated meeting, and it's the average stated meeting in Texas, and it sucks.
Right.
It's a business, and he's like, he
yes.
was like, I just wanted, what happened to the stuff we did the degrees? Why is everyone in a t-shirt and flip-flops now? Why are we talking about minutes and bills for 45 minutes? What was the point of this? Why are we eating before the meeting tonight? What was the point of this meeting? Why did we do this? Like, why did I even show up? Now, so imagine everything you just said. Those were all the little details, right? I could add in there having a clean lodge room or a clean lodge building for that matter. The good food after lodge. Yeah, it doesn't smell, right? Or a good smell if it has one. The solid ritual, the brethren are serious about what's going on. They're not joking or laughing throughout their entire thing, or they're not trying to make it lighthearted. It's serious and solemn, and everyone is dressed well. Imagine if every stated meeting was like that, if your lodge could achieve that. That is, that should be the real goal. Because otherwise it's I understand that like a degree where we're taking in the candidate and we're bringing them through the journey, right? So it should be serious and solemn. But anytime a lodge is opened, it should really be like that, And if you're going to introduce the candidate to that, that is what he's going to expect. And if he gets to your stated meeting and it's, I wouldn't even say subpar, it's just almost unnecessary, that's why so many of our new Master Masons just stop coming, because it's like, well, it was pointless for me to come to this. I'll just come to the festive board they have once a year, or this
that's
one
why so many. That's why so many leave after 5 years. They tried to stick with it, and it just wore them down, and they finally just that's what I've had. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Adam. What else you got to add? I didn't mean to just cut you off.
No. I mean, that's basically what I was saying, is that, we often think about the degrees, and that is the first step to make those fantastic. And the opening of and the closing of the lodge, of course, that should be as good as your lodge can possibly do it. But your stated meetings, no matter how many you have, whether you think you should have less or more, they need to be somewhat like that as well.
Yes.
They basically, let me put it this way: the stated meetings need to be worth it for your members to come to.
Yes.
Not just like members who are not your officers, right? It needs to be worth it for them to go to.
Mhm.
If it's not, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that probably sounds difficult for 99% of lodges in the state of Texas, including my own. For Sol Ross, I think St. Albans does it pretty well. I'm a member
But
of them, but
it's not difficult, right? It's just a matter of, because really what makes a good business meeting is proper implementation of committees, having an agenda, and saying we're not going over an hour at the most, right?
yeah, but 99% of lodges don't do that.
I know, and the thing, it's not hard to do, but it's you have to change an attitude. At your lodge.
I think if we were to start doing degrees like this, it might help in changing the culture of that lodge in general. And then they might be willing to put forth more effort in the stated meetings and make them more valuable as well, and stop with what's going on now. I think if you get brothers that put on that degree, and they do it, let's say, through all 3 degrees, and hopefully there's more brothers that are coming in at the same time, so you'll end up doing a lot of them at one time. But let's say you just have one person come through, and you put them through all that, and you just watch the expressions and watch his eyes and watch everything about him, and then see the life in that person at the end. The lodge has to think for just a second that maybe if we change our culture just a little bit, maybe if we tweak it and up the experience just a little bit, level up just a little, then we might be able to have the same experience ourselves just by giving it away. I mean, that's how I feel a lot of times. It's like with this, and with all the education stuff I do, all running around the state, I receive just as much as I give, because it really does change my attitude and fill my heart with gratitude when I see how much the brothers receive, how well received I am with the brothers.
Mhm.
So just think about that when you're trying to implement these things. Talk it through with some members and get some buy-in. And man, and Adam, you're absolutely right. And hopefully at the end game, and you tell these brothers, look, hey, we're doing this with a purpose. We're not doing this with just trying to enhance it for this guy. We're going to keep doing this for a while and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then watch the attitudes of the members change as you go along doing that. I think that would go a long way with our lodges.
Yeah, I hear brethren say a lot that, like, the degrees for the candidate. I've heard that so much, and I reject that. I think that is true to an extent. For the most part, it's true. But that degree is also for the brethren that are there assembled, for the guys that are participating, but also the audience, right? It's a reminder for what they went through.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're taking it serious. You're doing all this stuff for the candidate, but also for those brethren as well. It's a good reminder for them. And that's a good example of why your stated meetings, you should treat them that way too. Because that brother that just went through all the degrees and now he's at the stated meeting, I mean, why not continue that practice and keep taking it seriously? You want to joke around and have a good time? Go to dinner somewhere after, and have a drink or have a good meal, and then you can talk about anything you want.
If we weren't meant to be intentional and take our meetings seriously, then we would not need a ceremonial opening and closing, right? Because Lions Club can have a business meeting without ceremony, right? So can Rotary. So there's a reason for the ceremony, and that's to put us in a specific mindset. Sure, you're handling business, right? But yeah, you should still approach it as Freemasons and be intentional about your meeting.
Exactly.
If you've heard one of my presentations, then you know you're walking into the mind of God when you're in there. The lodge room represents the mind of God, if you think about it. Think about the cosmos, and what is the cosmos?
Interesting.
That's the mind of God established. And if you're in, and think about those circumambulations and all that kind of stuff, and then it'll start making sense to you what I'm talking about. But if you're walking into the mind of God to do His work on earth and do a good job and become better so that you can do a good job for all, then of course it's a serious matter. It's not something you joke around with. It's not something you wear flip-flops to. It's something that you suit up and you do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
You do what's necessary to prolong the lodge as well as those around you.
True. All right, guys, it's
Not just
10:30.
about our trinkets. Not just about our trinkets, guys. We get a lot of them.
No, it's about my endowment pins. That's my idea, and if anyone steals it, I'm coming after you. I just saved so many
Only
lodges
if
with that
it's
idea.
a flaming chili. Only if it's a flaming chili. And then I'll
Gotta
accept
have the
that.
flair. You don't have enough flair in your
Yes.
apron.
Yeah, I gotta have flair.
Yes. This is Texas.
I'll send people away, but like, sir, it's not about dress codes. It's like you need to go home and get more flair before you come into this lodge. I'm just saying. I don't care what you wear as long as you have flair.
This requires suspenders so that you can present your flair.
All the way up. Yeah, when you get degrees, you get a lapel extender with it. Just for
I love that idea so much, and I just wanted to say at Sol Ross we have a running joke where the guy that has the most endowment units, he always says he's the most endowed.
There you
member.
go.
The best endowed or the most endowed.
Yeah.
So I could only imagine someone with like 40 lapel pins of their endowments at Grand Lodge strutting around.
Like a Korean general.
Make him the only one allowed to wear his swag in Grand Lodge. All the rest of the lodge have to bow down to him and just let him swag in Grand Lodge.
And you reserve all the front seats for the most endowed members. So you got all these guys with blades of metal sitting on the front. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's open up
Very
the final thoughts. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to something that Brother Olivier said about the fraternalism being the most important part of a lodge. And I totally agree with that, because if you go to lodge and you don't like the people that you're in lodge with, it's just not going to work. None of it is. And the only way to get to like is to be around them and hang around them and talk to them outside of the business meeting. And I totally agree with that. And I've been to lodges where you can tell people don't like each other in the room, and then I've been to lodges where everybody likes everybody, and it's completely different feel.
Yeah.
So I really like what you said there, brother.
You can usually tell almost as soon as you enter the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Nothing? Well, I'll say, because I know Dennis likes to go last, I'll say, first of all, everybody, thank you for taking your time out of your Sunday evening to be here. Most definitely, y'all contribute to the conversation. I know, like Adam apologized for, no, don't apologize for coming and talking. That's why I send y'all the link. We value your feedback. You value Masonic improvement, right? You find value in what we do because you're the inner circle, and you could not be the inner circle unless you're a channel member, right? So you clearly find value in what we're doing. But we also find value in what you have to say, right? That's the thing about value. I guess as we're talking about that, if you put value in somebody, it's only right that they should. I think it's a normal human response to find value in what they have to offer, also, right? And I think as lodges, we have to put more value on not only what we do, but on these petitioners, and not value in that, oh, as soon as they turn a petition, they get in. Value in that these are going to be people that could possibly contribute to our lodge long term, that could be harmful or beneficial. We need to put enough value in them and ourselves to be sure that they are a right fit for our organization and charge accordingly. It just comes around full circle. So definitely appreciate y'all all coming on here this evening and giving your feedback and sharing your thoughts. As long as we're talking about the inner circle, as long as we're talking about value, we do have this inner circle, and all members of the inner circle are invited to these Zooms pretty regularly. We have other things that are exclusive to them. They get ad-free content. If you're listening to this and you find any value in this, in the chat there's a link, but also if you're watching this after the fact, look down in the video description because there is a link to become a inner circle member, and I would say the value's there because we retain our members very well. So not only are you getting value from the videos, but obviously there's value after the fact too because we retain probably like 90% of the people that sign up to become members. So definitely appreciate everything that y'all are contributing to us, because you're clearly finding value in what we're offering as well, and that means the world to me, and I know to Dennis also, but to me, because I was thinking earlier today about how this all started as just a jackass with a blog, right? And now it's something, and now it's grown into something, to a true movement. I feel like in Freemasonry, and I just appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you.
Well, Justin, I was a wolf pack of one before you came along, and now we're a wolf pack of two, and then we grew to a wolf pack of many. So anyways, let's get back to value. Let me stop devaluing, but that was a good move. I think you're absolutely right that, great minds think alike, and we are like-minded. We're supposed to be like-minded, not same. We're not same-minded. Otherwise, I wouldn't be part of this because I don't want to be in a club of drones. But we are like-minded, and that's why we do enjoy each other's conversations, and we do have the following that we have on YouTube and Spotify. So I do think there's some truth to that. Iron sharpens iron. You get some value out of somebody, you contribute value to that person as well just by being part of it, and so there is some truth to that. I get that same value when I go and give presentations. They always receive me well, and I feel loved and appreciated. I really do. All the hard work I put in comes right back to me because they always take me in with lots of brotherly love and affection, and really that's what fires up my flame, my internal flame. So that being said, the main reason I wanted to talk about value tonight, I was hoping it would kind of get into the money issue as well, because we do have to increase our dues and our endowments so that we can provide that value. And it may not be so earlier I was saying that we don't have to do anything more. It doesn't cost us anything more to provide that value that I talked about. However, that person is, once they do that first one, man, they're going to want to see that second, and they're going to be willing to dish it out, right? And the reality is that even when I went through, and I had a great experience, it wasn't what I just said, but it was a great experience, and I would have given $500 a degree easy for what I went through, and that was years ago, because that's how I felt about Masonry, right? So we increase the value. These guys want to keep doing more, and they want to be a part. And then we do have the money. We have the resources from these degree fees and from the dues that will come to follow, as well as the endowments that we have on hand. We will have the resources to provide that value with less cost to the lodge. So if we do the fundamental things that have to be done, these other things don't have to be such a big impact to the lodge. Now you think you're pulling teeth because you say this is going to cost more than $500 to feed everybody when Grand Lodge comes to celebrate our 150th anniversary, right? It's like pulling teeth. Oh, I can't do that. Well, hell, you could do that if you had $30,000 in the bank, and you had $100,000 in investments just kicking out dividends every month. All it takes is some smart financial decisions. And no, we can't make it all happen in our time right now. This is a long process that it's going to take for many lodges. So don't feel down in the dumps because your lodge won't be able to get there in 5 years, right? But it can start with us. Once we change the culture of what we expect from ourselves and our brothers, and then the new guys coming in see that expectation, see how we carry ourselves and how we hold ourselves in lodge, they're going to be happy that they joined, glad that they're a part, and be happy to continue to support that vision that we started. And even though it's going to increase to $200, $300, $400 someday for the lodge, those brothers will be ready because they're in that prime zone that they're there to pay, right? We have our non-age and our old age, and we have our prime zone to support our lodge. So at that time, younger guys will be in that prime zone to support our lodge as we grow into the old age. And then we can sit back and be happy with what we did by changing the culture. And now we're almost ready to set an investment because these young guys took it to the next level. It's not gonna happen overnight. None of this is happening overnight. But you have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And if you start with stuff that you can control, that doesn't cost you any extra, why not do that? And Adam, you're right. We shouldn't stink in our lodge. And I'm all for incense in degrees and in the lodge. But if it's to cover up a smell that's
you're all for what?
Incense.
Oh, incense. Oh, okay. All right. Never mind. Carry on.
Common sense and incense will solve all problems.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. So I'm all for incense in the lodge for degrees and in regular stated meetings. But if it's to cover up a stink that comes every time you turn off your air conditioner, I am not for that. Clean your floors, clean your walls, clean your bathrooms, fix whatever plumbing issues you might have or drainage issues with your roof, whatever it is, fix it. And you can do that once you change that culture. Mm-hmm. Once everybody starts expecting more, little things are going to change here and there. Some guy's going to walk in and say, man, I don't like our toilet paper holders. They're going to put some fancy ones in. Or I don't like the faucet in our kitchen sink. I'm going to put a nicer one in with a nice spray thing for the guys for the stewards. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have stewards, stop making it the burden on one or two guys to bring a mediocre meal in from Chick-fil-A, or it's not even that expensive. So it's not even that high grade. So Kentucky Fried or whoever is the cheapest chicken house in your town, put name in here, insert name here. Stop bringing that food in. Just change your dinners to go after lodge, and then everybody go out to eat. Everybody buy what they can afford. Don't make it super fancy at first. Just do it together. I'll eat hot dogs with my brothers if it's together and we're all doing it after lodge at an actual place that serves hot dogs. I don't want it served at my lodge, but I'll buy a hot dog somewhere else that's served to me. But then I have the choice, right? So change the experience up a little bit, enhance that experience by going out to eat instead of, having mediocre bologna sandwiches because somebody can't afford to provide meals to the lodge. Mm-hmm. You're asking somebody who can't afford to provide meals, and he can't do it. So you get bologna sandwiches. So why not put the burden on everybody on their own merit, right? Okay. And then if they can't go, then just stay and have a glass of iced tea. That's pretty cheap. That's $1 something. Do that and fellowship with your brothers.
Yep.
I can tell you, I'm fat enough I can miss a few meals and it wouldn't affect me. And I think that we got a lot of brothers out there that their wives would be happy if we would take off our Mason bellies and put on our pre-Mason bellies, because I'm there, man. Brother Hoff is laughing because it's true. It's true. We all get there.
You ever see
It just happens.
the EAs that they came wear their bib wrap because their belly pushes it down. So
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh.
they got a
Yes,
head start.
yes. So anyways, I saw a guy actually put a thumbtack in there, or not a thumbtack, whatever those.
Like a paperclip.
No, not a paper clip. It was an
Safety
actual
pin.
safety pin. That's it. I don't use them much around here, so I don't.
Wow.
But I've seen a brother actually do that. So
Nice.
here's okay, and I'm gonna close this up. I'm gonna wrap this up. It's late. Here's my last thought. When we become a master mason, we hear a story about the white leather apron. Well, we actually hear a story at the very beginning, right? The white leather apron, the white lambskin. The thing that we're known for most in the world is our white lambskin. And that's something that's supposed to be worn at all honorable times. Get rid of the cloth, guys. It's not that expensive to get 20 lambskin aprons. If you need them, give me a call. I can help you.
He'll hook you up.
Yeah, that's not a pitch. I'm just saying, it's not that experience. It's not that expensive. And if everybody in the lodge were to wear their own, that they probably have already, because we all go and buy our aprons somewhere at some time. So if everybody wears their apron, then the ones that are on display are for the visitors that come in, so they'll have their white lambskin, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody's got a white lambskin.
Or
Tell
just
me
stop
that
providing
one,
them all together and make everybody step up.
Tell me that won't make sure.
Because
But
everybody
tell
in
me
the
that
district will
won't
know
make
if
an
I'm
impact.
visiting this lodge, I need to take my own apron.
Bring
Yeah.
your apron or you can't come in.
I mean, you can. You have to have an apron. Right?
Oh my gosh. Here we go. Elitists. Y'all are elitists. Not just kidding. But the idea is leveling up, right? That's what we've been talking about all night. So if we're going to level up our experience, we have to level up our mindset first and bring it down into our heart, and make sure that we're doing it right along the way, and make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it for our brothers. We're not doing it for ourselves. So as we shift our culture forward, we got to make sure and bring our brothers along. And then if you have your newsletter, send out to all those guys who's not showing up, just the guys who aren't showing up. Everybody else gets an email. If you send a newsletter out to those guys and they see what's going on and they see the pictures of the guys and how happy they are in their white leather apron, in their suits, in the dining facility, they just might want to come back. They might want a part of that. They might want a piece of that. So thank you for giving me this extra 30 minutes of your time tonight so that I can wrap up the entire show in one say. Oh, I left Jason's point out. Let me get to Jason. No, just kidding. I'm grateful for all y'all being here and listening to me talk too much. You know, it says a lot. I love you all. I think about you all a lot. And I think about our lodges and how well we're doing in representing ourselves in our lodges and in pushing this craft forward, even though it doesn't always want to move forward. You know, I learned a long time ago, well, not too long ago, because she's not that old, that you never know what people are thinking until you do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I put on my bow tie one day and my daughter says, "Dad, I like it when you're fancy." So I hadn't worn anything but a bow tie since. You never know until you try something different. And if everybody were to try something a little different to add a little bit of value, we might just find the masonry that we thought we were getting from the beginning. So with that, I love you. I can't wait to see you again, and keep it between the points.
It's good.
As it rises in the east. That's how I say that.